I'm Lisa Smith, and this is Focus on Business. Today we've got Brian Calley from the Small Business Association of Michigan, Jim Richards from Total Security Solutions, and Carolyn Bloodworth from Consumers Energy, who's got a big announcement about more money for small businesses. Hello and welcome. I'd like to make some introductions before we get started. We have Brian Calley on the call today with the Small Business Association of Michigan, Jim Richards, a special guest from Total Security Solutions, and we have a wonderful, exciting announcement from Consumers Energy with Carolyn Bloodworth. So let's get right to it. We've got a lot to talk about today. Brian, we are continuing to talk week after week about workplace reopening. There's a lot of news going on, and I know that SBM is in the thick of it. Can you talk a little bit about the Michigan Economic Recovery Council and what's happening?
There's a group that has been working under the direction or in an advisory capacity to the governor for the past several weeks, maybe a month, on how to reopen the economy. And we're seeing now some of those recommendations come into being. So the construction industry was the first major industry to reopen after the earlier widespread closures. And then starting just a day or two after this program will air is the manufacturing industry, which obviously is enormous in Michigan. And we started hearing from the big three automakers that they were planning on being up and running on May 18th. But if they were to be up and running on May 18th, that means that their suppliers have to be running earlier than that. And so that schedule we're seeing that start to play out. But with it, even though there are many, many other industries that are still under required closure orders today, you can start to get a sense for what the requirements will be for everybody to open. We've talked previously on this program about the four main pillars of employee and customer protection against spread of disease, being first of all the health screening of employees, then social distancing within the workplace, separating people as much as you possibly can. Then there's disinfecting and sanitation schedules, and that would include people's hands, not just surfaces, but also regular hand washing, and then the use of personal protective equipment or PPE that you're going to hear more about on this on today's program. So we know that those are going to be requirements, but what we're seeing in these orders are a few more of the details behind them. As an example, it's becoming clear that employers are going to be asked to take the temperature of their employees. And we didn't know for sure. We knew the temperature is going to be part of it. We thought maybe employees could take their temperature at home and report what it was, or that they didn't have a fever before they come into work. But it's becoming clear that widespread, at least for the types of workplaces where a lot of people will be together, there will be an expectation that employers have procedures to take temperatures. It's going to be a brand new thing for employers to figure out. And then getting your hands on the equipment to do it, of course, is going to be another struggle. So there's a lot to consider, and even though most sectors are not opening yet, I think these earlier sectors and the rules for them give us a pretty good indication of what's going to be required across the board.
Yeah, there was the governor has released her plan on how she's looking at opening the economy. That in and of itself, I had a chance to skim through it before the program today. Just for the viewers' benefit, we record this show on Thursday and you're seeing it on Sunday. So we'll certainly have more time to review that plan and how she's looking at it, and maybe even focus on it next week. But what we're seeing is she's got certain things she's looking at, and she's going to be looking at a lot of different components before each piece of the economy is reopened, and she's looking at it in regional sections or different geographic areas as well. So it's nice to see that there's been a lot of thought put into the plan and that the plan is there. Obviously, we're not going to be driving those numbers. The reality of the situation is going to be. And we're all going to have to adopt as we move into this new world. This week, I ordered an infrared thermometer. I hear they're kind of rare, so I heard someone had one, and I went ahead and ordered it. It was $99, and now we're going to have that in the workplace for the first time. So, not something I'd ever thought of as a capital improvement, but it's part of our capital improvement this year.
But one of the things that I think we're still looking ahead on, so some things we already know, but one of the really big questions we don't know yet is how the regions will come into play. The Michigan Economic Recovery Council, the MERC as it's called, they separated out the state into 8 different regions. And those regions are based on where people work and live and get their health care. Those are 3 major factors, and then they call them labor sheds, and basically where people live and move and generally move around. If you want to control the spread of the disease, the theory is that you can make decisions by region and according to the prevalence of the disease by region. But so far, all of the decisions, all of the orders that have come out from the governor, there's coming up on 80, I think 76 of them now. They've all been statewide. None have been by region yet. So we're looking forward or trying to anticipate when will these regions come into play. And my best guess is that it's going to be the more intensely public-facing types of positions, the kinds of things where you can't do social distancing, where you have to, for example, something like haircuts. As you can see, I've been following the orders. I tuck it behind my ear so that I don't look too disheveled, but it's getting critical. But nobody's figured out how to do a haircut from 6 feet away. I think that those are the types of professions that the regions are going to maybe come into play for the first time.
Yeah, I've had my daughter actually asked me to cut her hair for the first. Usually she's kicking and screaming at age 3, and now she's in her 20s asking me to cut her hair. But yeah, everybody's looking a little shaggy and gray, and I imagine that the last things that are really going to reopen are where people are congregating. Unfortunately, there's been such an impact on restaurant and events and hotels, and sporting events are really feeling it. So all of that is going to have to be probably last. And then the rest of us who have asthma or some underlying health condition, we're probably not, regardless of whether we open up our region or our state, we're going to have to wait for something even bigger, like a cure or an anecdote or something. So, but there's a lot to look forward to, and there's a lot of lift, a lot of hope as we're talking about reopening things. We want to do it safely. I think everyone agrees. Let's be smart about it. Let's not, lose a lot of people in the meantime. And so workplace safety is something that we've talked a lot about on the program lately. I have had the pleasure to invite a new guest on the show today. His name is Jim Richards, and he's the owner of a company called Total Security Systems. And I'm sorry, Solutions, Total Security Solutions. And you get a little nervous on the show, introducing people. So Jim, you are located in Michigan, and we have seen lots of different companies in Michigan who are manufacturers, and they are creating something, and now COVID comes along and they are part of the solution. So up in the UP, a clothing manufacturer is now manufacturing face masks, and dental guards are now doing face shields. Total Security Solutions is generally a ballistic manufacturing company. Tell us about your company and what is changing for you to meet the market since COVID has had the outbreak.
Yeah, we manufacture in Fowlerville, Michigan, and we've been in business for 15 years there now. And we were always pretty much strictly just bullet resistant products, barriers, systems, curtain walls, doors, stuff like that. Um, and that's where we've grown our business and thrived. And as this started to kind of evolve, we started getting some local requests and things like that, for virus guards, and which have really been around for 20 years. They were called reach guards or sneeze guards or things like that, and it was kind of a market that we didn't participate well in. But there's obviously a need. There was a supply need. We were a critical manufacturer, so we were able to stay open. And we're really kind of thriving more in, if you can think about local municipalities, townships offices, credit unions, things like that. That's where we're seeing the bulk of our work, because we're making solutions that are for that environment or whatever. So it's we have a mobile virus guard unit that people can sit on the counter and move around and stuff like that too. But we're kind of operating more in that higher end market. Not typically what you would see at Costco or Kroger, where they're just cutting a piece of plastic and sticking it up. We're trying to, design something that we're feeling is going to be up for a period of time, but yet make it functional, and then people can work with it every day as well and be protected.
Yeah, I've seen the mobile product, and I've seen the fixed system so you can have an existing countertop and put your fixed system on it, and then put almost an invisible barrier between the people who have to serve the community and the community. And so it's really it's a nice looking unit versus what are some of the solutions that people are kind of turning to out there? They might not even know that there's these kinds of solutions. So what are some of these homemade kind of things that are happening?
We've seen curtains, we've seen shower curtains, we've seen, people putting like boards with just small pieces of plastic or things like, people are grasping at anything to try to, protect themselves for one. And then, in I'd say the last 2 weeks, it's really gotten interesting or crazy because people are realizing that, we're opening up, and that's as a country, you know what I mean? We do a lot of work, nationally as well as in Michigan or whatever. So we've been getting calls, daily, like, hey, we just realized that, we're going to be opening up on May 15th. And, for us, it could be manufacturing reception desk. It could be, any kind of reception area where people are interacting with the public, like, hey, we need something in place before we open up, whether it's to follow guidelines, whether it's just to protect their employees. So it's really been a shift in marketing and thought process for us as an organization, because, probably 10 years ago, we switched our marketing and our thought process from, stopping robberies and things like that to protecting, people's most valuable asset, which is their employees. But we never did non-ballistic stuff because there really wasn't a market or a niche for us, because we're a custom manufacturer. So with this situation, it really got us rethinking that, do we care if it's ballistic or non-ballistic, if we can still, protect people and protect the employees? So it's kind of driven us into that direction.
I've seen some of your custom installations, and just to give viewers an idea of what a departure and what a shift this has been for you, you might take the CEO's office or a big conference room and make it all ballistic glass.
Yes.
Those are the kinds of big, beautiful custom installations that your people can work with an architect or an engineer and create this amazing, it looks like a glass room, and now, but yet it's really a safe room.
Yeah. Yep. And this
So
this couldn't be any opposite of that, you know what I mean? So it's been different for us because of the sense of urgency and the lack of planning and things that have gone into these. We had 2 calls on Monday locally close to Fowlerville. We were there Monday afternoon, and we're putting those in on tomorrow, Friday, so that they can open up, this coming Monday or whatever. So that's, there's a lot less planning. There's a lot just figured out as we go because the people want to get open, but yet they still want it nice. They still want it aesthetically pleasing. And that's when they deal with us, that's really what they're looking for. They're not looking for just somebody to throw something up and put a screen in between them and the people. They want something that's going to last and be there, but yet they want it done quickly. And that's in multiple parts of the country. I mean, next week, we're leaving for New York, New Jersey with, I think it's somewhere between 8 to 10 locations. And we'll do 2 projects a day. And then we'll come back. Yeah.
Well, Michigan is lucky to have you here. And we are also so thankful that you are looking at your product offerings so that you can meet the demand of the market and help everybody be safe. Everybody deserves to be safe, and why not have a good-looking company and a good-looking unit when you're looking safe, right? So
Exactly.
thank you so much for being here. And if you'd like to get more information about your products, where would we go for that?
The easiest way is to go to the website, and that's www.tssbulletproof.com.
Great. Thanks so much for taking some time to be here today.
Thanks for having me.
Let's turn our sights a little bit here to what's happening legislatively right now in Michigan. Brian, I know you're very close to the legislative process and what's happening. Can you give us an update?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of action right now, and it's not in the way that you normally see it. There was an attempt at some negotiations on some reopening conditions and putting a schedule in place a few weeks back. That did not go well, and so now it's entered a new phase, and that new phase includes a couple of major lawsuits that have been filed. The first one that came was a Michigan Congressman Paul Mitchell from the 10th District in the Macomb County area. It filed a lawsuit challenging the stay-home orders and several aspects of the rules and requirements during this time, and challenging them on the basis of the U.S. or the federal Constitution. So that is in federal court. Well, that one will be decided, and that's one that depending on what happens, it could be dismissed or it could go through a whole process. But a decision on that one could potentially have ramifications nationwide. But it's really difficult to tell whether or not it really has a chance of succeeding. It's too early in the process. But in the state courts, there is a challenge to the governor's orders as well by the legislature, and they're mainly challenging the 1945 Emergency Powers Act that the governor has been relying on to move forward without any kind of legislative involvement. And that's one that I expect will probably work its way all the way through to the Michigan Supreme Court. So so expect a lot of legal action. Obviously, that's a confrontational type of a situation. But in the meantime, people might wonder, well, what are the rules? Whose rules am I supposed to follow then in this case? Well, until the governor's actions, unless the governor's actions are changed by a court decision, the regulatory agencies that regulate our businesses, those apply to our to small businesses. So that's until a court says otherwise, you have to follow those rules.
Well, if a court said otherwise, who would be the final word?
Ultimately, it would have to be a court of final jurisdiction. Just being practical, every court, their orders have standing, but you have to assume that whatever the decision is at the Court of Claims level, it'll be challenged to the Court of Appeals and then to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, the Michigan Supreme Court, is the court of final jurisdiction. And when they make a decision, it will be binding.
Right. So my question really is, this feels very like somewhat politicizing or jockeying for power in the midst of a crisis. But if they take this, if they take this power away, then the governor no longer gets to decide to make orders, executive orders. What happens? What is it that isn't going to happen?
It would basically put the rulemaking process back into the regular rulemaking process, which requires hearings for administrative rule procedures. And if you want to change a law, it can't just be done by one person. It has to go through the process. You know, how a bill becomes a law. I remember when you were in school and learned about that. Really, it goes back to that process.
I see. Okay, so it's really limiting the power of one person. I see. Understand. Well, that's fascinating, and I guess we'll watch that unfold as the weeks go on. What is happening on the funding side? There's been, since the last show, there's been money that's been let out of the House on the federal side. What's going on with the Paycheck Protection money?
Well, the Paycheck Protection Program is still underway. There's still time to get it. We encourage our members and small businesses across the board to look into it and consider it. But what is even more current, or what's very exciting now, is that we just heard from Consumers Energy Foundation that they are dedicating $1.8 million to small business grants. And so joining us today in the last couple of minutes here is Carolyn Bloodworth, who works for the Consumers Energy Foundation. And I thought, Carolyn, maybe you could just put it out there. What is it that is available to small businesses now?
Well, thank you, Brian. And we're so pleased. On behalf of the foundation, we're really proud to announce $1.8 million. We're granting awards to 9 different organizations across the state, and we're doing this in mission that many small businesses, particularly women and minority-owned businesses, simply were not able to get into that Paycheck Protection Program funding. And so we are providing funds to 9 organizations across Michigan. That includes Venture North, who's working with Traverse Connect in their COVID emergency. The Greater Grand Rapids Chamber Foundations, their Rapid Response Economic Relief Fund in Kent County. Unlimited, it's COVID-19 emergency microgrant funding for Battle Creek and Calhoun County. Way of Greater Battle Creek and Kalamazoo region, their Kalamazoo Small Business Grant Fund, working with the city of the county. Also the Jackson Community Foundation, their small business fund, they're working with the Enterprise Group of Jackson. Lansing Economic Area Partnership, LEAP, they have a one and all program that will be launched in a couple weeks here. They'll be supporting Clinton, Ingham, and Eaton counties. Flint and Genesee Chamber of Commerce, their foundations Restart Flint and Genesee Fund. Also the Saginaw Future, working with Saginaw Chamber and their small business fund. And last but not least, the Michigan Women Forward organization. They have a resilience microloaning grant fund that will be made available to women and minority businesses statewide.
Carolyn, that's most certainly the best news of the day. I'm glad we saved that for the best for last. Consumers Energy, $1.8 million out there for small businesses. I'm sure you're going to hear more about that also. Thanks for being here, everyone. Have a great week.
May 7th of every year is World Password Day. It's a time to reflect on our password habits and vow to do a better job. One common issue that we often see is people that are reusing or recycling their passwords. Reusing the password is using the same password over and over again on multiple websites, and recycling the password would be using the same password and adding a 1 or a 2 or some other character at the end every time you need to change your password. This is a bad thing because in past years there were 3 major attacks against large organizations where password vaults were stolen. Adobe, Yahoo, and LinkedIn all had password vaults stolen. Now the passwords were encrypted at the time, but as time has gone by, the attackers have decrypted those passwords. So they know your username, which is your email address, and now they know the password that you used on that site at the time that they were stolen. So if you're still using one of those passwords, or you had the same password on all 3 sites, they're going to be able to attack you. So The other thing that they do is that they'll take that username and password and they will start with websites like American Express, and they'll try and log in using that old password. Then they'll go to American Airlines and they'll get through the rest of the A's, then they'll work on the B's and the C's, and then they'll add a 1 to the end of the password and a 2 because they know this is what we do. Now they're using automation and they're working on this 24/7, 365 to try and attack your accounts. So reusing old passwords or recycling passwords, you're going to be in trouble. So what we need you to do is 3 things. 1, you have a strong password on every single website. Have a unique and strong password. A unique and strong password on every single website. And then you also need to have 2-factor authentication turned on, if possible, on any website that's got important information on it. So do those 3 things: unique, strong, 2-factor authentication, and you'll stay safe out there.
Focus on Tech, brought to you by Providence, making technology easier.
This is Denise Policella. Today on Focus on Legal, we're talking about whether you, the employer, can be liable to your employees when you bring them back to work and they contract COVID-19. Now, this is something that essential businesses with critical infrastructure workers are likely already dealing with, and unfortunately, the answer is it depends. It depends on what kind of business you're running, and it also depends on how good your policies and procedures are when you bring everybody back to work and reopen your business. Here's what we do know. There's not currently any blanket immunity against liability for all employers for this kind of thing. There are a couple of exceptions for healthcare workers and first responders. This information is all contained in Executive Order 36. It's important that you read through this EO, especially prior to opening up, to make sure that you understand how it impacts your business and that you stay apprised of any future executive orders which may impact your business. It's also very important that you develop and then implement a set of clear and enforceable policies that will protect both your employees and your customers. These will include things like sneeze guards, restricting the number of people inside your place of work at any one time, hand washing, masks, physical distancing, staggered work schedules, and obviously a policy that restricts your place of work to anybody who has shown symptoms or cannot prove that they are asymptomatic or fever-free. It's also important to remember that COVID-19 is still relatively new, and we're really not sure how it's going to spread or impact the workplace. So it's important that you as an employer stay abreast of all current CDC guidelines, all current executive orders, current legislation that may impact your place of work, and of course, always seek the advice of competent legal counsel.
Focus on Law, brought to you by Policella and Associates, PLLC.
Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next Sunday.